The Galactic Council had existed for 15,000 years, uniting over 300 sentient species across the Milky Way. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, watched as entire star systems were born and died. But in all their collective memory, no species had ever caused as much concern as the humans. Admiral Krell stood before the emergency session, his forearms clasped behind his back in the traditional stance of grave concern. The massive chamber fell silent as the holographic displays activated, showing footage from the outer reaches of human space. 3 days ago, Krell began, the human colony on Epsilon Eridani was attacked by the Dreth Empire. As you know, the Dreth have been expanding aggressively for centuries, but they've always calculated their moves carefully. This time, they miscalculated. The footage showed the Dreth warships descending upon the small human colony. The Dreth were formidable, 8-foot-tall reptilian warriors with technology centuries beyond what humans possessed. The colony had only basic defenses, a population of merely 30,000 souls. By all reasonable metrics, it should have been an easy conquest. Then the footage showed something unexpected, humans fighting back with improvised weapons, forming defensive perimeters, and holding ground against impossible odds. In the history of the Dreth Empire, no species has ever resisted their initial assault, Krell continued. Yet the humans held out for 6 days. 6 days against an overwhelming force. The council representative from the Illurian collective, Tala, raised a slender appendage. Admiral, while impressive, surely this is not cause for an emergency session. Krell's secondary eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his kind. What you haven't seen is what happened on the 7th day. The footage changed. A single human ship appeared at the edge of the system. An exploration vessel, not even properly armed for combat. The ship, named Horizon, was commanded by Captain Jack Wilson. The display showed Wilson's face, weathered, determined, unremarkable by human standards. The Horizon was the closest human vessel, days away from any potential reinforcements, Krell explained. Captain Wilson knew the colony was doomed. He knew his ship stood no chance against the Dreth fleet, and yet, the footage showed the Horizon accelerating toward the Dreth command vessel, engines flaring beyond safe parameters. What you're witnessing is the first documented case of what humans call going nova, a psychological phenomenon where humans, when pushed beyond all reasonable limits, abandon self-preservation entirely in favor of achieving one final objective. The council chamber watched in stunned silence as the Horizon, a vessel never designed for combat, executed a series of maneuvers that should have torn it apart. It weaved through Dreth defensive fire, sustaining damage that would have caused any rational commander to retreat or surrender. Captain Wilson transmitted a message to the Dreth command ship before impact, Krell said, his voice somber. The message was simple. You should have left us alone. The footage ended with the Horizon colliding with the Dreth command vessel in a blinding flash. The resulting explosion disabled 3 other Dreth ships in the vicinity. The humans have a concept called the last straw, the final burden that breaks even the strongest back, Krell concluded. What we've witnessed here is merely the beginning. The humans are not just fighting back. They've broken in a way no species has broken before. As the council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs, Krell displayed the final piece of information. Transmission intercepted from Earth's military command. It contained 3 words that sent chills through the assembled representatives. No mercy remains. 6 weeks after the Epsilon Eridani incident, the Galactic Council reconvened. This time, the atmosphere was tense with barely contained panic. The once orderly chamber was filled with raised voices and accusations. Representative Mox of the Centurion Federation slammed his metallic fist down. How did we not see this coming? The humans were supposed to be contained. Tala, ever the voice of reason, attempted to restore calm. We've all studied human history. Their capacity for violence was documented, but so was their resilience and creativity. What we're witnessing now is something different. Admiral Krell nodded grimly. The humans have a term for it. Total war. It's a concept most civilized species abandoned millennia ago. The holographic display activated again, showing a map of Dreth territory. Large portions of it were now blinking red, territories under attack or already lost. In just 6 weeks, the human response has escalated. Beyond all predictive models, Krell explained. They've deployed what they call wolf packs, small, fast ships that operate without central command, attacking Dreth supply lines and communication nodes. The Council watched as footage showed human vessels, many of them repurposed civilian ships, executing hit-and-run attacks on Dreth outposts. The tactics were chaotic, unpredictable, and terrifyingly effective. But most concerning is this, Krell continued, bringing up new footage of a human facility on Mars. This is what they call Project Lazarus, named after a human myth about rising from the dead. The facility was enormous, stretching across the Martian surface. Thousands of ships were being constructed simultaneously, but they weren't the usual human designs. These were darker, more angular, built for a single purpose. They've abandoned their previous shipbuilding protocols, Krell explained. These vessels sacrifice safety, comfort, and longevity for pure combat effectiveness. They're kamikaze ships, designed to be used once and discarded. Representative Dorn of the Helix Confederation shook his head in disbelief. This is madness. They're sacrificing their economic future for revenge. That's what we failed to understand, Tala interjected. Humans don't calculate like we do. When pushed too far, they stop weighing costs and benefits entirely. The display changed again, showing human Admiral Lisa Reese addressing Earth's combined military forces. Her face was a mask of controlled fury as she spoke. For generations we have reached for the stars with open hands, seeking friendship and knowledge. Those hands have been slapped away, our colonies attacked, our children murdered. So be it. The galaxy wanted warriors instead of explorers. We will oblige them. The footage continued, showing masses of humans volunteering for military service, industrial centers being converted to war production, and scientific institutions redirecting all research toward military applications. The humans have a concept they call the switch, Krell said quietly. It's the moment when their psychology fundamentally changes, when they go from avoiding conflict to embracing it completely. Another intercepted transmission appeared, this one from a human general to his troops before an assault on a Dreth fortress. Remember Epsilon Eridani. Remember what they did to our people. Today, we're not just soldiers. We're the Reapers. Hand. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were transforming themselves into something the galaxy had never seen before. We need to contain this, Mox insisted. If the humans continue on this path, the conflict could spread. Admiral Krell's expression darkened. I'm afraid it's already too late for containment. Our latest intelligence suggests the humans have a name for this conflict now. They're calling it the Awakening. 3 months into what the humans now openly called the Awakening, the Galactic Council found itself in unprecedented territory. For the first time in its 15,000-year history, the council chamber included an empty seat. The Dreth Empire's representation had been withdrawn as their civilization fought for survival. We must intervene, insisted Representative Mox, addressing the council. The humans have gone far beyond reasonable retaliation. This is extinction-level warfare. Admiral Krell brought up the latest intelligence reports. The holographic display showed the current state of the conflict, and it was worse than most had feared. The humans had not only pushed the Dreth back from their colonies, but had penetrated deep into Dreth territory. Over 40 Dreth worlds were under human occupation, or blockade. What's most disturbing is their efficiency, Krell noted. Human military doctrine has evolved at an alarming rate. They've developed new technologies, tactics, and weapons in mere months, advancements that should have taken decades. The display showed footage of human ground forces deploying what they called blind wolves, autonomous combat robots that operated in perfect coordination with human soldiers. The machines showed no hesitation, no fear, and executed their programming with terrifying precision. They've repurposed their entire AI research infrastructure for war, Tala observed. They're not creating true AI. They're deliberately keeping their creations limited but specialized. They're avoiding the ethical questions by building perfect tools rather than new minds. Representative Dorn shook his head in disbelief. And their propaganda. It's unlike anything we've seen. The display changed to show human information broadcasts. Images of the Epsilon Eridani massacre played alongside stirring speeches and calls to action. The message was clear. Humanity had been wronged, and now it was time for justice. They're unifying their entire species around this conflict, Krell explained. Previous human wars were nation against nation, ideology against ideology. This is different. They've found a common enemy, and it's erased their internal divisions. The Council watched as footage showed human nations that had been bitter rivals for centuries now sharing technology, resources, and military assets. Old enemies trained together, planned together, fought together. We've identified a human named Tom Reed, Krell continued. Before the conflict, he was a professor of history. Now he's become their most influential strategic thinker. The display showed Reed addressing a gathering of human military leaders. Throughout our history, humans have fought humans. We've perfected the art of war against ourselves. Beings who think like us, feel like us, strategize like us. Now we face an enemy that doesn't share our psychology, our values, or our limits. This isn't a disadvantage, it's our greatest strength. The Dreth cannot predict what they cannot understand. Tala's appendages twitched nervously. They're weaponizing their own psychological uniqueness. It's ingenious and terrifying. Admiral Krell nodded grimly. The Dreth made a critical error. They studied human technology but dismissed human psychology as irrelevant. They saw the human's emotional nature as a weakness to exploit. Instead, it's become the engine of their undoing. The display changed to show the latest human military innovation, ships they called Fireflies, small, fast vessels piloted by human AI pairs designed to swarm and overwhelm larger Dreth battleships. In the footage, hundreds of these craft surrounded a Dreth dreadnought, their coordinated attacks systematically disabling the much larger vessel. The humans have a concept called proportional response, Krell said. For most of their diplomatic history, they've adhered to it. What we're seeing now is what happens when they abandon that principle. An intercepted transmission from human. Fleet Admiral Reese appeared on the display. We didn't start this war, but by all that is holy, we will finish it. The Dreth thought they could break us. Instead, they've unleashed something they never anticipated. Humanity without restraint. The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled over them. The humans weren't just fighting for survival or revenge anymore. They were fighting to ensure this would never happen again. We need to open diplomatic channels, Tala suggested. Finally, before this escalates further. Admiral Krell's expression was grim. We've tried. The humans have a new condition for dialogue. The complete surrender of the Dreth Empire. Nothing less will satisfy them now. 6 months into the awakening, the Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike any in its long history. The human Dreth. Conflict had evolved beyond a simple war into something more profound. A fundamental reshaping of galactic power dynamics. Admiral Krell stood before the Council, his normally imposing frame seeming somehow diminished. The Dreth Empire has fallen, he announced simply. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The Dreth had been one of the oldest continuous civilizations in the galaxy, with a history stretching back almost 8,000 years. Impossible, Representative Mock sputtered. The Dreth controlled over 200 systems. 187, Krell corrected. And as of yesterday, the last Dreth throne world of Krizoth surrendered to human forces. The holographic display activated, showing footage of the surrender ceremony. Human Admiral Reese stood impassively as the Dreth Emperor, Kravik the Unyielding, removed his ancestral crown and placed it at her feet. The symbolism was unmistakable, complete submission. How? Tala asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How did they accomplish this so quickly? Krell brought up a complex tactical display. The humans employed what they call strategic paralysis. Rather than fighting for territory, they systematically targeted Dreth command structures, supply lines, and communication networks. They didn't need to conquer every world. Just make it impossible for the Dreth to coordinate their defense. The display showed human strike teams infiltrating key Dreth facilities, human hackers disrupting Dreth networks, and specialized human ships destroying Dreth communication relays. But most effective was their psychological warfare, Krell continued. The humans understood something about the Dreth that even we had missed after millennia of coexistence. The Dreth civilization was built on a foundation of never having experienced true defeat. The Council watched as footage showed human broadcasts being transmitted into Dreth territory. The messages were precisely calibrated, not threats of destruction, but promises of inevitability. The humans didn't rage or boast. They simply stated, with cold certainty, that Dreth resistance was futile. They broke the Dreth spirit, Representative Dorn observed, his voice tinged with awe and horror. Not just their military. Krell nodded. The humans have a concept they call shock and awe, overwhelming force applied precisely to create psychological collapse. They didn't just defeat the Dreth. They made defeat inevitable and made sure the Dreth knew it. The display changed, to show human occupation forces on Dreth worlds. Surprisingly, there were no mass executions, no planetary bombardments, no atrocities that many had feared. Instead, the humans established order, provided aid to civilians, and began systematic disarmament. This is perhaps most concerning of all, Krell said quietly. The humans are being merciful. But it's a calculated mercy. The display showed human Governor Marcus Wells addressing the population of a conquered Dreth world. We remember Epsilon. Eridani, we will always remember, but we are not here to exterminate or enslave. We're here to ensure that what happened to us never happens again. To anyone. The Dreth Empire as you knew it is over. What comes next is up to you. Tala studied the footage carefully. They're offering the Dreth a path to redemption. It's not what I expected. It's brilliant strategy, Krell replied. The humans are positioning themselves not as conquerors, but as liberators. They're rewriting the narrative. The Council watched as footage showed human engineers working alongside Dreth civilians to restore infrastructure damaged in the fighting. Human medical teams treated Dreth wounded. Human teachers began educational programs explaining the new reality. They're creating a dependent relationship, Representative Mox observed, ensuring the Dreth become reliant on human governance and protection. Krell brought up one final piece of intelligence, a new human political entity called the Protectorate. According to the documents, former Dreth worlds would be administered under this framework, with a path to eventual self-governance. The humans aren't just winning the war, Krell concluded. They're winning the peace that follows. And in doing so, they're sending a message to the entire galaxy. An intercepted transmission from human high command appeared on the display. Epsilon, Eridani will never be forgotten. But from its ashes, we will build something the galaxy has never seen. An order where the strong protect the weak, where aggression is met with overwhelming force, and where justice is swift and certain. The Council members exchanged concerned glances. The humans hadn't just broken under pressure. They had been remade into something new and formidable. We must reach out diplomatically, Tala insisted, before they turn their attention elsewhere. Krell's expression was grim. They're already ahead of you. Human ambassadors have requested an audience with the full Council. They say they have proposals for a new galactic order. 1 year after the fall of Epsilon Eridani, the Galactic Council chamber was transformed. The traditional circular arrangement had been modified to include a prominent new section. The human delegation occupied a space that had been hastily constructed to accommodate them. Ambassador Emma Ward stood at the center of the chamber, the first human to address the full Council. Unlike the elaborate regalia worn by most representatives, she wore a simple dark uniform with a single emblem, a phoenix rising from flames, the new symbol of united humanity. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice calm, yet carrying an undercurrent of steel. I stand before you today not just as humanity's voice, but as the harbinger of necessary change. The chamber was silent. All 300 species represented watching the human with a mixture of fear, respect, and uncertainty. For too long, this council has operated on principles of non-interference and balance of power, Ward continued. These principles have allowed certain civilizations to prey upon others with impunity. The attack on Epsilon Eridani was not an isolated incident. It was the inevitable result of a system that rewards aggression and punishes restraint. Admiral Krell shifted uncomfortably. The humans had done their homework. They had compiled a damning record of the Council's failures to intervene in conflicts across the galaxy over the past several centuries. Humanity proposes a new framework, Ward said, activating a holographic display of her own. We call it the Pax Humana, a system where aggression against peaceful civilizations is met with immediate and overwhelming response. The display showed a network of rapid response fleets positioned throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to any act of unprovoked aggression. These forces will not be exclusively human, Ward explained. We invite all civilizations that share our commitment to protecting the vulnerable to contribute. But make no mistake, humanity will bear the primary burden of enforcement. Representative Mox rose from his seat. This is unprecedented. You're proposing to become the galaxy's police force after existing as a spacefaring civilization for barely 2 centuries. Ward's expression didn't change. We're proposing to do what this council has failed to do for millennia. The status quo is no longer acceptable. The display changed to show the human-administered protectorate, former Dreth worlds, now experiencing unprecedented stability and growth. The humans had implemented reforms that transformed the once militant empire into a network of productive worlds. The Dreth believed might made right, Ward continued. We've demonstrated that justice makes might. The worlds under our protection are thriving because we provide security, infrastructure, and opportunity, not just military domination. Tala spoke next, her voice measured. Ambassador Ward, while your intentions may be noble, what you're describing sounds dangerously close to a human-dominated empire. Ward nodded, acknowledging the concern. The difference between an empire and a protector is consent. We don't seek to rule. We seek to safeguard. Any civilization that wishes to join our alliance may do so. Any that wishes to remain independent may do so, provided they don't threaten others. The display showed a new document, the Guardian Accords, with signatures from dozens of smaller civilizations that had already aligned themselves with humanity. Many species have already recognized that humanity offers something unique, Ward explained. We understand both peace and war in ways few others do. We've experienced the heights of cooperation and the depths of conflict. This gives us perspective. The Council watched as footage showed joint human-alien military exercises, knowledge exchanges, and diplomatic summits. The humans were sharing technology, strategies, and resources with their new allies. Humanity broke when Epsilon Eridani fell, Ward said, her voice softening slightly. But we didn't shatter. We reforged ourselves. What emerged wasn't just anger or vengeance, but clarity. We saw the galaxy as it is, not as we wished it to be. A final piece of footage played, the memorial on what remained of Epsilon Eridani, a simple stone monument inscribed with the names of the 30,000 humans who had died there, along with a single phrase, "Never again." This is our promise, Ward concluded. Never again will a peaceful civilization be destroyed while others stand by. Never again will the powerful prey upon the weak without consequence. The old galaxy died with Epsilon Eridani. We invite you to help build what comes next. As Ward finished speaking, a notification appeared on the Council's diplomatic channel. 17 more civilizations had requested to join the human-led alliance. Admiral Krell leaned toward Tala and whispered, "They've changed the game entirely. The question isn't whether the humans will lead, it's whether we'll be part of what they're building, or left behind." Tala watched as Ambassador Ward calmly fielded questions from the Council members, her confidence unwavering. "The humans didn't just break," she murmured. "They evolved." 3 years after the formation of the Pax Humana, the Galactic Council had been transformed beyond recognition. What had once been a ceremonial body with limited power had evolved into a true governing authority, with humanity and its allies forming the core of a new galactic order. Director Thomas Reed, formerly Professor Reed, stood before the newly formed Strategic Planning Committee. Once a historian, he had become the chief architect of humanity's galactic policy. "The integration is proceeding faster than anticipated," Reed reported, displaying statistics on the holographic interface. 97 species have fully adopted the Guardian protocols, with another 43 in various stages of implementation. The committee, a mix of humans and representatives from key allied species, reviewed the data with evident satisfaction. The Guardian protocols were the foundation of the new order. Standardized defensive systems, emergency response procedures, and mutual defense commitments that bound participating worlds together. Most encouraging is the economic data, Reed continued. Worlds under Pax Humana protection have seen an average increase in productivity of 34%. Security breeds prosperity. Tala, who had left her position on the old council to join the Human Initiative, raised an appendage. And what of the holdouts? The Consortium of Seven continues to resist integration. Reed nodded, bringing up a map of the territory controlled by the Consortium, a group of advanced civilizations that had dominated their region of space for millennia. They represent our greatest challenge and our greatest opportunity. The A display showed the complex network of trade routes, military installations, and diplomatic relationships maintained by the Consortium. Unlike the Dreth, they hadn't committed overt aggression. They simply refused to acknowledge human authority. We're applying what we call strategic patience, Reed explained. The Consortium believes they can outlast us, that humanity's unity and purpose will fade with time. They're wrong. The display changed to show Project Lighthouse, a massive human initiative to establish cultural and scientific exchanges with worlds near Consortium territory. The humans weren't using military pressure. They were demonstrating the benefits of their system through example. The Consortium relies on cultural isolation to maintain control, Reed continued. Their member species are taught that their way is the only way. We're simply providing alternatives. The committee watched footage of human educators, engineers, and artists working on worlds at the edge of Consortium space. They weren't imposing human culture. They were creating fusion, blending human ideas with local traditions to create something new and vibrant. This is having an unexpected effect within the Consortium itself, Reed noted. We're seeing increased internal pressure for reform. Ambassador Emma Ward, now serving as the Executive Council Chair, spoke up. The Archon Dominion has requested admission to the Pax Humana. They were Consortium members for over 1,000 years. A ripple of surprise ran through the committee. The Archon were one of the founding members of the Consortium. Their defection was a significant development. They've watched what happened to the Dreth, Reed explained. And they've seen what's happened since. The galaxy is safer, more prosperous, and more connected than ever before. They want to be part of that. The display showed footage from across the galaxy. Former enemies trading freely, exchanging knowledge, collaborating on massive engineering projects. Species that had been isolated now participated in a galactic community where their voices mattered. We've created something unprecedented, Reed said, pride evident in his voice. Not through conquest, but through a vision of what could be. The committee reviewed the latest statistics from the former Dreth worlds. The species that had once been the most feared aggressors in the galaxy were now productive members of the Pax Humana. Their warrior culture transformed but not destroyed. They had found a new purpose as peacekeepers, their natural martial prowess channeled toward protection rather than conquest. The key insight, Reed continued, was understanding that lasting change comes not from forcing others to be like us, but from creating systems where cooperation is more beneficial than conflict. The display showed a network analysis of interspecies relationships across the galaxy. Where once there had been isolated clusters, now there was an interconnected web of dependencies and collaborations. When Epsilon Eridani fell, humanity broke free from its illusions, Reed said quietly. We thought we could join the galactic community on equal terms through goodwill alone. We learned that respect must sometimes be earned through strength. But we also learned that strength without vision is just another form of tyranny. The committee watched as footage showed the newest human initiative. Massive engineering projects to create habitable worlds in previously uninhabitable systems, expanding the frontier of life itself. We've moved beyond mere protection, Reed concluded. We're now in the business of creation. And that, colleagues, is how we ensure that what we've built outlasts us all. As the meeting concluded, a message arrived from the Consortium's leadership. For the first time in 3 years, they were requesting formal talks with Pax Humana representatives. They've seen the writing on the wall, Ambassador Ward observed. The old galaxy is gone. They can either help shape what comes next, or be shaped by it. Reed nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Humanity didn't just break. We transcended, and we're bringing the galaxy with us. 10 years after Epsilon Eridani, the galaxy had entered what historians were already calling the Human Era. Admiral Krell, now an elder statesman serving as a bridge between the old order and the new, stood at the observation deck of Nexus Station, a massive structure orbiting the reconstructed colony of Epsilon Eridani. Beside him stood Director Reed, now in his 60s, but still sharp as ever. The two of them watched as thousands of ships gathered for the decennial remembrance. Representatives from over 400 species coming together to honor what had been lost and celebrate what had been gained. "When I first met you 10 years ago," Krell said, "I feared humanity would become the very thing you had defeated. I feared you would build an empire on the ashes of the Dreth." Reed nodded, his eyes fixed on the spectacular view. "Many humans feared the same. Power changes those who wield it. That's a constant across all species. And yet," Krell observed, "you've managed to create something different. The Pax Humana isn't an empire. It's a framework. You don't rule. You enable." The observation deck's display activated, showing statistics from across the galaxy. In the decade since humans had taken a leadership role, interspecies conflict had decreased by 94%. Trade had increased by 300%. Scientific advancement was accelerating at an unprecedented rate as knowledge flowed freely between civilizations. "We had an advantage," Reed explained. "Humans have spent thousands of years fighting each other. We understand conflict intimately, its causes, its costs, its aftermath. When Epsilon Eridani fell, we didn't just see an enemy. We saw a system that allowed enmity to flourish." The display changed to show the ceremony about to begin. The new Epsilon Eridani was a thriving world, but at its heart stood the untouched ruins of the original colony, preserved as a reminder of what had been lost. "You know what's remarkable?" Reed continued. "The Dreth are now among our staunchest allies. They've embraced their role as defenders rather than conquerors. It turns out they were trapped in their own cultural narrative as much as they were trapping others." Krell nodded thoughtfully. "The galaxy feared what humanity would become when you broke. We expected vengeance, conquest, domination. Instead, you brought perspective." The ceremony began with a moment of silence observed throughout the galaxy. Then, one by one, representatives from each species approached the memorial, leaving tokens of respect. The Dreth representatives, once the most feared warriors in the galaxy, now served as honor guards for the ceremony, their presence a powerful symbol of transformation. "Humans have a saying," Reed said quietly. "The true measure of strength isn't in how much you can destroy, but in how much you can create." The display showed the massive terraforming projects underway in previously uninhabitable systems, the educational initiatives bringing knowledge to species that had been isolated for millennia, the breakthrough technologies emerging from unprecedented collaboration. "When we broke," Reed continued, "we didn't just lose something, we found something. We found our purpose." The ceremony reached its climax as 1,000 lights ascended from the colony ruins, one for each decade the original. 30,000 would have lived if not for the attack. As the lights rose into the atmosphere, they formed a massive phoenix, the symbol that had come to represent humanity's transformation. 10 years ago, I warned the Council that humans were dangerous," Krell said. "I was right, but not in the way I imagined. You've proven dangerous to complacency, to isolation, to the old ways of thinking." Reed smiled slightly. "We didn't set out to remake the galaxy. We simply refused to accept that the way things were was the way they had to be." As the ceremony concluded, the next phase of the celebration began, the commissioning of the first intergalactic exploration vessel, the Horizon 2, named after the ship that had sacrificed itself in the defense of Epsilon Eridani. The vessel represented the pinnacle of collaborative engineering, with systems and components designed by dozens of different species. "Your people have a unique ability," Krell observed. "You can look at the stars and see not just what is, but what could be." Reed nodded, watching as the massive ship prepared for departure. "That's the final lesson we learned when we broke. Breaking isn't the end, it's often the beginning. What matters is what you build from the pieces." As the Horizon 2 departed on humanity's first mission beyond the Milky Way, Admiral Krell understood at last what made humans truly different. Other species had evolved to fit their environments, to find a niche and perfect it. Humans had evolved to transform their environment, to imagine something better and then create it. No being will forget the day humans finally broke, Krell said, echoing the title of the historical text now studied throughout the galaxy. Because that was the day the future truly began. Reed smiled, watching the Horizon 2 disappear into the distance, carrying representatives from 100 species to explore what lay beyond. We broke, we rebuilt, and in doing so, we showed the galaxy how to do the same. As celebration pods launched from thousands of ships filling the space around Epsilon Eridani with light and color, the message was clear. What had begun in tragedy had culminated in transcendence. Humanity had not just survived its breaking, it had been transformed by it, and in turn, transformed the galaxy itself. No being would ever forget the day humans finally broke. But more importantly, no being would ever forget what humans had built from the broken pieces, a galaxy united not by fear but by possibility.